Hello everybody, this is Lance King with Healthcare Compliance Solutions. I'm here today with Dan McNeff. He is the CEO and founder of Legally Mine. And we're here today to interview him to discuss how his company has grown to where it's at, discuss a little bit of the backstory to that, and get into some details on how Legally Mine can protect small to medium-sized practices, which Healthcare Compliance Solutions is helping with HIPAA, OSHA, Medicare, and employment law. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of his journey to getting into where he's at now and how he's preventing many who have experienced litigation in the past, many who have had some sort of an interruption legally from literally losing everything. And so with that, I'm going to get into some of the backstory with Dan.
How are you? I'm Dan McNeff.
Now this is Dan, and this is very raw. We're just going to get into a few questions. Dan, would you tell us about how why you decided to develop Legally Mine?
I was working for Jay Mitten, a man who is considered the father of asset protection in the United States. He created most of the legal tools used today for asset protection. He had developed a self-help kit that he was marketing to medical associations throughout the country. I went to work for him directing the dental portion of what he was doing. Also as a speaker. Eventually I ran the entire company and then acquired the rights to his company. But I wanted to change the company from being a self-help kit to one being a full-service kit, full-service program where we actually could put these asset protection tools together for our clients and make sure that it was done correctly. It was a little difficult to start off with, but we've grown to a point today where we have 6 full-time attorneys and around 50 full-time employees, with about a couple dozen law clerks and paralegals that help us complete the work, and various administrative and salespeople. And the company has grown tremendously, especially in the last 2 years. Has various medical associations have seen what we do and how we've helped our clients, not only to protect their assets from lawsuits, but also significantly reduce their income tax. And by doing this, our program has just reached a level where we're in fairly high demand, and people like to have us come back over and over again. We put together a pretty good educational program.
Now, Dan, I just wanted to ask about, you mentioned in the last 2 years you've really been growing. Before that, what have been some of the major challenges that you've experienced with some of your growth? And part of this question is because, a lot of practices that have recently joined our service, they've just opened up the practice. Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the challenges that you experienced as an entrepreneur in getting to where you can now say, hey, for the last 2 years we've experienced a lot of growth?
I think the biggest challenge we've had is just simply finding the right people to put in the right place to accomplish what we need to have accomplished. The simple fact is, I don't care who you are, starting out new, you're going to weed through people, and that's it. As we've weeded through various people, we've come up with people that we know now can do the work. And even now we have some changes, but we know more about what we're looking for as far as who we want to put in place, and it makes a pretty big difference. So now with the people in place, we're able to accomplish everything that we want to for our clients and do so in a timely fashion.
Now, it brings up an interesting question. So you've surfaced a principle that surfaces in a book called Good to Great. Are you familiar with that book?
No.
So there's a book that's widely read by a lot of young entrepreneurs, which basically says that when you start out, the most important thing is to get the right people in the right seats. And so what I'm gathering is that in the beginning it takes some time trying to figure out where people are at, but you've had some struggles, I gather, at times in in making.
Well, and I think everybody does. I think one of the greatest reasons businesses fail, other than just not having enough money to make it through, and of course that was a part of our problem as well as we got started. But you know, we managed to fight our way through that. But one of the biggest problems people have is recognizing their own weaknesses in specific areas. And so, you know, I know, for example, I'm not a great detail-oriented person when it comes to shuffling paper or doing things of this nature. And so I just need to find people that can do it for me. One great example is just simple accounting. You know, finding somebody in-house to come in and do our accounting full-time, it has been one of the greatest things we could have ever done for ourselves. And so that's a part of it. You need to find someone who can accomplish, or another company at times, who can accomplish things for you that, frankly, you're not going to be good at doing. And sometimes it's hard for an individual to realize, hey, I'm not very good at this stuff. And, you know, you need to recognize your own talents, take advantage of whatever talents you have, and let somebody else do what you don't do well.
That's very well said, and you have some experience with that, where it sounds like my guess is there have been times where it's been really challenging to let go of some of the control, to realize that there are things that people might not be able to do better than you, but that you need to release the control of in order for you to then have access to your competitive strengths in growing the business. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's very fair to say. In fact, I'm sure there are people in the company that would still like me to control a little bit more than I want to. Well, and, you know, a part of that's just letting go of your own ego.
Right. Well, thank you for giving us a little bit of background and helping us to understand maybe some of the challenges that any business owner experiences as they grow, and tell us a little bit about so these 2 years. What has made the difference in your growth, and what do you think people have really, like, what do you think the difference maker has been in helping you to grow as quickly as you are at this point?
Well, it's twofold. Number one, I have found a couple of people that are able to communicate as well as, you know, maybe even better than I do.
That's tough to say, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes it is. But able to go out and do the educational seminars in such a way that it opens people's eyes up and they're getting them to motivate. That's number one. But number two, on the backside, our people here at the office accomplish everything that we promise that we're going to accomplish. And when problems come up, a lawsuit comes in, we're able to handle it. People at the end of the year do their taxes and they're getting a reduction in their taxes. And frankly, they come back to the educational seminars that we're doing and they stand up and say, hey, you know, you're kind of silly if you don't do what these people say, because they're saving me a ton of money. Or some people stand up and say, well, listen, I got hit with a lawsuit and these people got rid of the lawsuit right away. And, you know, those are the types of things where, you know you're doing something that helps the client. It just makes you feel good. And more importantly, it gives you credibility with the people you're talking to. Okay.
Now, I want to back up just a minute and actually this next part of this interview talk about 3 specific things. I want to get into more of the problem that's being experienced in the industry, and then talk about the alternatives of what people in your mind have been doing. to mitigate some of these issues that surface with healthcare providers, and then get into more of your solutions. So the problem, alternative, and solution. So would you mind getting into some of the issues that people go through before they determine that you're a good fit for their company, their practice?
Well, the major issue we're going to address is going to be lawsuits. The simple fact is the average physician in America is going to be sued 4 times before their career ends. The American Medical Association did a study that showed that a physician is 7 times more likely to be sued in any given year than they are to be in a car wreck.
Really?
Yeah. So now, you know what? My guess is most physicians have car insurance. But they rarely think about, what am I going to do to protect myself against the lawsuit? That's where we come in. And we teach them the proper.
I was never connected. Okay.
The one thing we need to recognize is the simple fact that we are the largest firm of our kind that's ever existed, frankly. So we know what we do works because we face more of it than anybody else has ever faced. And that does, in fact, make a difference. Now, in America today, a lot of times you'll have, especially in the legal world, you're going to have things that become a hot topic or a hot thing to do. What people don't recognize a lot of times is these are untested theories. And so one of the things that's going around right now is the use of irrevocable trusts. And a lot of times we're talking about irrevocable trusts, which is one of the hot items that people are using today for the purposes of asset protection. There's the domestic irrevocable trust, and then there's the offshore irrevocable trust. Domestic irrevocable trusts are going to be less expensive, and the jury is still out on whether or not they're going to really succeed because there's no real case history through the courts and not solid case history. The case history we've had right now has been really mixed. The one thing you need to remember is when you create an irrevocable trust, it's irrevocable, which means it's not going to be changed, and you're making a permanent decision. That always scares me to make a permanent decision, especially if you're fairly young. The other thing that concerns me is that you are, in fact, giving control of your assets to somebody else. You cannot be the trustee for your own irrevocable trust. The trustee always has control. So if you get into your 80s and you decide, hey, I want to continue living in my home, but your trustee, which might very well be your kids, decide that they'd like to sell your home, and they think it's in your best interest for health reasons to put you in a nursing home, you're going to the nursing home because you've given up control of your assets. And so those are the types of things that concern me with the irrevocable trust. On the offshore irrevocable trust, those things still come into play, but now it's happening in a different country. And so the IRS doesn't like irrevocable trusts. A lot of times people abuse the trusts. So it also leads to heightened risk for audits from the IRS. The laws that are needed to protect your assets exist here in the country. It's making sure that you use them in the proper way and the legal way that will benefit you. For example, if you use a self-help kit today and you're not really aware of the specific laws of your state or of other states for that matter, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble thinking that you've protected your assets when in fact you have not. And it pays to get professional help and make sure that it's done the correct way.
So people that reach out to you, what are some of the typical predicaments that they get themselves in, some of the issues that they express over the phone or through internet when they look up your website that then transition into your services?
Well, most of the time when people come to us, they're coming because they want to have their assets protected from lawsuits. And so what would happen is somebody gets sued, And this happens all the time. In fact, it happens every day across the country. Somebody gets sued. They think they protected their assets because they placed their practice, for example, into a corporation. The problem is that today judges have the ability to do what's called pierce the corporate veil. They use what's also referred to as the alter ego rule, and with use of that alter ego rule, they basically determine that your corporation is nothing more than an extension of yourself. Now, that corporation has to be closely held, but your corporations are all going to be closely held. Closely held means that it's not traded on a public basis. So if you've got a closely held corporation, the judge in all likelihood is going to determine that it is nothing more than an extension of yourself. And in that case, any and all assets in your name become subject to the lawsuit. So what's the problem? Well, people think, well, I've incorporated, I don't have to worry about it. And then they get sued, and the lawsuit is going to name them as an individual. The judge pierces a corporate veil. Now their savings and investments, their home, their rental properties, even their cars and their boats, anything and everything they own will now become subject to the lawsuit and can be taken in the lawsuit. People are shocked to find out that that can happen. And, you know, a lot of times the lawyers now sit there red-faced and saying, well, I thought incorporating would help you. But you need to be caught up completely on the laws and understand just exactly where you sit. And if you don't make the right decision, then ultimately you'll be the one that ends up losing everything. And, you know, you may not feel like it's your fault, but it won't matter. You're going to lose.
So just to clarify, so if somebody was to have anybody come up to them and accuse them for malpractice of sorts, when you say piercing the corporate veil, would you mind unpacking that a little bit for individuals who are very new to their practice and maybe have a little uncertainty on what that means?
Okay. There's a law, I guess it's a law or a rule. It's called the inside-outside rule. Initially, we created corporations to help people gather money together in order to build ships and skyscrapers and railroads and things of this nature. That's what a corporation was for. But when lawsuits became prevalent, the idea came that, well, listen, we'll incorporate that practice, and we'll make that practice a separate entity. It has its own tax ID number, and it's almost as if the government sees that practice as an individual. And you, on the other hand, are another individual. You have your own Social Security number. So now we have two separate individuals. And so the inside-outside rule would assume, well, they have to sue the practice if the practice creates a lawsuit. Now you need to understand that this isn't just about malpractice. This could be employee-employer relations. In fact, more of the lawsuits come from that than they're probably going to come from anywhere else. You have to fire somebody, they're not happy with being fired, and now they're going to file a lawsuit against you. And sexual harassment is one of those lawsuits that often comes about because you can't disprove that you did it. They can't maybe not prove that you did do it, but you know what? They're going to drag your name through the mud and hope that, you know, you'll give them some money in the end. It's just a way to get back at you. But the problem is they then would have to sue the practice. They couldn't sue you because you would be an outside entity to the practice. Well, now the courts have mingled that. When they pierce the corporate veil, they basically say, well, the alter ego rule says that you and the practice are the same. That means that anything and everything that you own will now be subject to the lawsuit against your practice. That's why whenever a lawsuit is filed, they're not going to just name your practice, they're going to name you. In fact, in hospitals, when one doctor, one way or another, does something that creates a lawsuit, they'll name the hospital and name the doctor that created a lawsuit, and then they name every doctor in the hospital. You know, they just throw everybody else. We'll just make it a blanket lawsuit. We're going to throw everybody in there because, you know, we're going to see if we can catch something along the way, and that's the objective. You know, and to see what they can get. Right. And we find that's one of the real big issues that we run into, and we have to call a lawyer and say, what do you have this guy's name on that lawsuit? And they'll say, well, you know, we're just covering our bases, and then we explain to them that this particular base is not going to do them any good and get their name removed from the lawsuit.
Wow. So, as you can tell, this is much more involved, and the need for protection is greatly enhanced when you get into your own practice and you realize that you're serving people, and people are a little apprehensive when they first start. Imagine you going to a doctor because you have something on your shoulder and it's worrying you, and you just never know what's actually going to happen to you, and so people's emotions are heightened, and when malpractice sets in and people start pursuing that, it really puts you in a very awkward position if you don't have protection. Now, what are some of the alternative solutions that you'll typically hear about, Dan, that you then help people sort through and realize that those really aren't solutions to a need for asset allocation?
Well, I've already mentioned the irrevocable trust. Another thing is that people will talk about U.S. compliant trusts. The U.S. compliant trusts are actually taking your assets and placing them in a life insurance policy that is written in a country that will allow you to use all of your assets as the premium.
Oh, really?
So, well, they'll take your savings, they'll take your home, they'll take everything and put it into the life insurance policy. Well, guess what that means? It means you don't own any of those assets anymore. The life insurance company owns them because they've been used as premium. Now, the good thing is that if they sue you, they can't take it because you don't own it anymore. The bad thing is, well, you don't own it anymore. And that's, to me, it's just like, well, yeah. You have life insurance that covers it, and the cash value but it's not going to come back in the form that you originally had it in. It's going to come back in the form of cash. And that
Right.
Some people are going to be okay with that, but you need to understand that that's one of those things that works. And is it safe? Does it protect you? Absolutely, it'll protect your assets. And
Sure.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It'll do it. And you need to also understand that one of the reasons people really, really, really like to do this is because they get some really, really, really big commissions based on all of your assets.
Right. Yeah.
So
they're pretty motivated.
it's a pretty hard thing. That and then the use of the domestic trust is one of the issues, and incorporating. The simple fact is that trial attorneys are smart. They've got a very well-organized association. The Trial Attorneys Association is smart, and they really have one objective, and that objective is to make sure that your assets are always available to them if they ever want to sue you.
Oh my goodness.
And so that having been said, recognize the fact that there have been great efforts made to make sure your assets will be available to them in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into this blindly, and it would be kind of like going and having eye surgery done by your dentist. Why would you want eye surgery done by your dentist?
Exactly.
Well, that would be a stupid thing to do. Well, there are specialties in the legal world as well. And you go to a general attorney who's doing everything. You can't really expect that attorney to know what it takes to really protect your assets. This is an extremely specific field and highly specialized field.
So then walk us through now, so those that are watching this, those that are listening to this, walk us through exactly, 1, 2, 3 step process of what somebody would need to do to then connect with the services of Legally Mine. Dan?
Well, first of all, we want to make sure you're educated on what we are going to do with your assets, how we're going to organize them. You need to understand right off the bat, we are never, ever going to take control of your assets out of your hands. I am absolutely adamant you always have to maintain control of your assets. I think that's priority number one. But we'll go through an educational seminar, whether we come out to speak with your medical, dental, optometric, podiatry association, whatever it may be. We'll come out, we will do a seminar. If you would just like to understand as an individual, we can do webinars, and we have those set up and do those webinars on a daily basis.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I think we probably do them multiple times, pretty much every day. And so that's an easy thing for us to accomplish. They will be, in fact, a live seminar because we like to be able to answer your questions as we walk you through the whole process. Now, once that's done and you agree to retain our services, then we walk you through a questionnaire that helps us understand what your assets are. We create a blueprint that gives you asset protection. As a part of this service, we are also going to show you a rudimentary income tax reduction plan with use of these tools. It's not going to be mind-blowing, but you know, every little bit helps, right? We'd like to save you some money on your taxes, and that's what we're gonna work on that. So included with the blueprint will be a tax savings plan.
So it's kind of above and beyond what people expect, right?
Right. So the next thing you do then is you'll have what we call a blueprint review, and one of the attorneys or one of the more experienced paralegals will go over your blueprint and show you exactly how things need to be organized, and you agree to do it. Well, we put it all together for you, and that's basically it. Now, once you have completed your program, we not only have our database with all the information, which you will always have access to through our system, but we also send you a hard copy in the form of a binder that includes everything that we've created for you.
Came up.
All right.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Thanks so much for helping those of you that are watching and listening to understanding some of the problems, some of the alternatives, and the solution that Legally Mine provides. Now, certainly there are many ways to find out a little bit more about you. Would you mind introducing how people can find out more about you that are currently looking into these types of services, where they need to go?
We have a website, legallymineusa.com, which you can certainly look at. That's probably the easiest way, or to simply give us a call at 800-375-2453, and you can arrange to have an educational meeting set up. And you know, that's probably the best way to do it. And we can make it meet your time frame so that it doesn't necessarily have to take up forever, but we want to make sure that whatever we do, we have at least enough time to make sure that you understand what needs to have happen. I don't want people going into this blindly saying, "I'll just," I suppose some people would do that, "Just go ahead and do it for me," you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that would be okay, but I really like people to understand what's happening. Part of what we do also includes a living trust. A living trust is a vital part of anybody's estate plan, and we have 2 dedicated trust attorneys. As a part of our package, we put that together for people. And you know what? To be honest with you, you're never ever going to beat the prices we're able to do it for. You just can't, and you can't because nobody else does the volume that we do. In virtually every state across the U.S., we create more entities than anybody else in that state. I mean, that's how much work we're actually doing. Because of the volume that we do, practice makes perfect. We're pretty good at what we do. I mean, seriously, we are.
That's good to hear.
And that makes a big difference. And so that's one of the great advantages of what we do. Now, we're not going to be as low cost as, say, going to LegalZoom.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But LegalZoom.com is once again going to be kind of a self-help thing.
Right.
And you know, you're going to pretty much be doing it on your own. You can get some advice from people over the phone, and I'm sure that their advice is just fine. They are not, however, asset protection specialists, and that's something that I mean, and they work more in a general world. But even some of their things cost more than what we're going to charge.
Right.
And we do the work.
Right.
So.
Well, and I'm gathering, is there some sort of an ongoing support that you provide where you're reaching out to people, giving them updates on some of the risk factors that are surfacing in the industry that people need to watch out for, maybe additional services that they need to get throughout time?
we set up a maintenance program where everybody that wants to can continue to have us maintain their programs. We actually help them prepare minutes for their meetings. We do it on a monthly basis. We make sure everything is renewed. We provide you with resident agent status wherever they need to be. For example, you can't have an entity in Alaska, which we use for almost all of our clients. You can't have an entity in Alaska without an address. We have an office in Alaska. We have the address for you. We become your resident agent in Alaska. Normally, that's a service that would cost you in the neighborhood of $400 a year. It's a part of what we do. We also provide you with newsletters. We have updates on our web page. Once a person is a client, we give them access to what we call the privilege section of the website, and that privilege section really is where a lot of the work is done.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I wanted to get into to one last detail before we wrap things up. You mentioned that that people have called you Baloo in the past, and I just thought that was a very fascinating part of our introductory discussion. Do you mind getting into that just a little bit? You've got bears all around your office, and
well, I loved Jungle Book when I was a kid. I probably read it 100 times, saw the movie 100 times. I don't know. I love Jungle Book.
That's a
and
favorite.
I used to go around and sing "Look for the Bare Necessities" all the time. I mean, honestly, I just identified with Baloo. And then when I got involved with the scouting program, all the boys started calling me Baloo. We had I would do Timberline, which is advanced training for young scout leaders.
Oh, okay.
And they would always give a nickname to the scout leaders, and my nickname was Baloo.
Okay.
And I don't know, I like bears, and so all of a sudden people started sending me bears, and the intriguing thing is I have probably close to, well, I know I have over 100 bears just in my office.
Wow.
So there's bears everywhere. And wherever we go, sometimes we see something we really like in a bear, and we pick up more bears. And it's just kind of grown. It's not just here. It's in my conference room. It's in my house. It's everywhere. We've just got bears everywhere.
Now, you said you connected with Baloo. What was it about Baloo that you feel like resonated in his personality?
Laid back until you really needed him,
Oh.
and then you wouldn't want to be in his way.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Dan, you've been very gracious in giving us some time and helping us to understand this important platform and helping these healthcare professionals grow their platform. And so for those of you that have listened and have more questions, you said legallymineusa.com. Well, that's it for today. I've been your host, Lance King, and I'm with Healthcare Compliance Solutions. If there are any questions that you have, please post them below the video, and we will direct those to Legally Mine and have a professional get to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much, and make it a great day.